Engaged citizens have the ability to instigate change and are essential to a healthy democracy. South Africa is often dubbed the protest capital of the world, with one of the highest rates globally. For more on the lessons from last week's unrest, we're joined by SADC Executive Director at Good Governance Africa, Maroleng. Chris, good evening, and thank you so much for your time tonight. When the unrest, those scenes were unfolding in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, we saw a lot of people take to social media to decry the state of our country, and also others were then taken to the streets to do what they thought would be the right way to deal with some of their frustrations, as our reporters were hearing, saying there's no jobs and all of that. Is that really what engaged and active citizenry is all about?
Good evening, Bongiwe. Certainly, this concept of engaged citizenry is quite a vexing one. But I think the underlying issue around it and what we're saying is that in order for governance, which is basically relating to who gets what, when, and how, and who decides, and whether this process occurs in a transparent and accountable fashion in the interest of the citizen, not in the interest of political elites, not in the interest of even commercial elites that drive these huge organizations in commerce and industry. We need to be able to hold our leaders to account. And more importantly, this concept of citizen dissatisfaction, which really underpins a lot of the violent protest action and the looting and the rioting that we have seen recently in South Africa, can be addressed. And the question of how we do it is basically where Good Governance Africa is now stepping to the front and providing certain solutions to our citizens to become more engaged, but engaged in a positive way that helps us find solutions and understand the root causes or underlying issues that have led to the mass grievance that we have seen and the outpouring that we have seen in many parts of South Africa recently.
And how would you say then you're stepping into the picture in order to ensure that you're giving the citizens a voice? Because it does look like there's a disconnect between those that are really in power and have been put there by those who voted for them, as well as those on the ground, because we saw in some instances really a lack of leadership in other, especially when you're looking at other scenes that were unfolding in some of these provinces.
Indeed, and you touch on a number of themes that we at Good Governance Africa would like to provide some guidance and leadership on with regards to addressing this issue of citizen dissatisfaction and addressing the crucial question of good governance and supporting it. We at Good Governance Africa ultimately are described as an applied policy think tank that also advocates for good governance. However, we're saying our role needs to be much more than that in order to address this crucial question of citizen dissatisfaction. One, we inform citizens about what their rights are, what the opportunities are to get actively engaged. And this, Bongiwe, is more than saying to people, go to elections and vote in those who you would like to govern you. We are taking it a step further, and we're saying that essentially we believe that through our social contract, there are elements even within our constitution that say we as South Africans need to make a pledge towards good governance. And good governance ultimately means that how can we support processes that hold our leaders to account, that inform citizens on what their rights are and what their duties and obligations are of those who would govern us. And we at Good Governance Africa on the 28th of this month, that's actually on Wednesday, we'll be launching a very interactive website that first of all provides information around what is going on, because we've seen a lot of information overload in the media and in other spaces that is not necessarily accurate and talks to the root cause and the solutions. The second thing that we're saying is that the citizens themselves, through our pledge, can actively engage with us by signing on to be members of this good governance social organization that we are championing, which basically will advocate and call on our leaders to apply and practice good governance in the things that they do. We believe that Good Governance Africa will be in a position ultimately to support good governance, not just in Africa, but specifically in South Africa, by creating this social movement and beginning with this pledge for all of us to subscribe to good governance in South Africa.
So how then does it translate to action, especially because we've seen a lot of some initiatives that were calling on members of the public to be part of either a petition here or a petition there in order to get government to do essentially what it's supposed to do. So how are you then going to ensure that it reaches even the highest office in the land if it has to?
Fantastic. We are developing a suite of tools that will be launching on this interactive website that I'm talking about that provide the information, first of all, around what is good governance, what are the steps that citizens can take, whether it is at a local government level through their municipalities advocating for change. We are also empowering our citizens to create this bridge between policy. Those are the things, the plans that talk to who gets what, when, and how, and ensuring that there is a process of accountability, enhanced accountability. And we say, as a civil society organization, we want to hold hands with the citizens of South Africa to ensure that the social movement cannot just be about signing on to petitions, looking on social media and tweeting or whatever social medium it is, but actively calling our leaders to account for them to apply more effective leadership that is aimed towards good governance. So ours is a holistic approach to solving this crisis, and I think it is time now that the citizens of South Africa not only go out and protest around bad governance, bad service delivery, and also go out and negatively engage, but ultimately enable each other to hold those who are in authority, those leaders, greater to account.
And talking about arming people with information, which I'm hearing you talk about quite a lot, it would then suggest that from where you're sitting and the research that maybe you would have done is that some citizens may not really understand the power that lies in their hands in order for them to effect the kind of change that they're hoping for from those they voted into power.
Brilliant, Bongiwe, because ultimately we assume a couple of things. That we all know what the responsibility of those who would govern is in this process. It is also assumes that we understand that the institutions that are in place to serve good governance ultimately are pro the citizens, and that the citizens know how to engage them. What Good Governance Africa is proposing is that we fill this gap of maybe an uninformed citizenry who do not have direct links to the very same institutions that should be ensuring good governance. And the question that you ask on how do we do this is basically, yes, to educate and inform, but ultimately also to hold to account leadership in a more proactive way that does not talk to the negative manner in which grievance, legitimate grievance, by the way, where we have a situation of deep inequality in our country, poverty, where ultimately we're looking at a situation where we have 70% youth unemployment. It means that the solution is not just in the hands of what we understand as governments, but it is also calling on the private sector to join hands, to provide a better way of delivering effective services to the people, creating jobs and opportunities to the citizenry in South Africa.
I wonder then, what would your assessment be of how government fared when it comes to the handling of the unrest? Because we saw some serious inefficiencies, and also we saw really, them not speaking in one voice. If you're looking at what, the cabinet ministers have been saying, it is either the situation is under control. We did receive, there's also intelligence information that we sent there. Now we're hearing that the police minister saying he never received anything, and also talking about an insurrection and no insurrection. Really, a lot of confusion then created around this time. How would you say, in terms of governance, government really has fared during this time?
It is exactly that, Bongiwe, where what we are witnessing in South Africa maybe are great inefficiencies in governance. And by governance, I go back to that simple definition about who gets what, when, and how, holding our leaders accountable and ensuring that when they lead us, ultimately, they do so in a transparent and accountable way. Give you an example. You indicate to us that one of the key features of what unfolded in the past weeks in South Africa was really an inability of our governance systems, our institutions, our government to respond to this supreme emergency. These present themselves as failures in intelligence, i.e. providing the necessary early warning to the law enforcement agencies, the security agencies that are supposed to serve and protect us. And ultimately, within this mist, we see the establishment of a narrative that does not give a clear indication of what needs to be done, what these security establishments are going to do to safeguard us and to deliver this crucial role of protecting our state, protecting our country, protecting the citizenry. But it talks to a deeper governance failure, which is how we expect our leaders in government, in commerce and industry to ultimately create opportunities for people to address this fundamental grievance that we saw expressed in such a violent way in many places in South Africa, which is this deep inequality and poverty. And these are the questions that we are saying that Good Governance Africa would like to provide some leadership, some coordination for citizens, not to respond and engage in negative, violent ways, but ultimately to hold our leaders more accountable, to create more transparent institutions that we believe can respond to this important threat that really talks to the survival of South Africa as we know it.
And how important does it then become for communication platforms to then be able to also ensure that citizens themselves are also armed with information on a daily basis?
It's crucial in this era where we talk of alternative facts, we talk of fake news. The crucial role of organizations like Good Governance Africa and what we are trying to do is really step into that gap where there is what we describe as information asymmetry, where the information and the tools for citizens to understand what is going on, to have reliable information that is provided to them, that is not fake, that is not alternative facts that are presented, but credible information that helps us hold our leaders to account, understand what our role is as citizens, to basically improve our institutions, build them, and talk about arriving at these political settlements in our society that talk to our social contract, which is really enshrined in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. We have rights. We have responsibility as citizens. And what Good Governance Africa is saying is through our pledge, we undertake to go out into South Africa and create a platform where those who are interested in good governance, not just political parties, empty promises, can ultimately go out and take steps to improve the future of our country.
All right. Thank you so much for your time tonight. That was Chris Maroleng.